is going to be fun. I made the announcement on Patreon saying that we're doing this live, so we'll see how this goes. When you are ready, sir.
Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 14 of Dualistic Unity. I am not what you think. I'm not. And I am very, very excited to bust open, break down any ideas that you may have of me being something spiritual, something that has anything figured out, someone that's teaching someone that's a good person. I'm not saying that I'm a bad person, but I'm not what you think.
I am also not what I think. I find that really interesting the more it settles in over time because, it's so easy to fall back to the idea that I am enough. But there isn't even a question until I ask it. There's really no need to tell myself or even reiterate that I'm enough if I'm not asking the fucking question. And so that's really all it comes down to, is just continuing on without thinking that you have to question your value, that you have to question your place, that you have to question yourself outside of the assumptions that you use for false security. Those you should question. You should question the illusions that you rely on because you think you need to, until you don't need to, until the illusions just fade away because you recognize what they are. Illusions. A way to kill the time where you could otherwise just be making time, using time, making the most of time, just being here in the present.
Well said. Yeah, it's not there if you're not asking. If you're and that's just it. Is the focus on that, on those ideas, like on thinking about it instead of just being it. Like every single time, it's always, oh, how am I doing? Check the check-ins, the constant check-ins. And when you realize that there's no possible way to do it adequately, it's just so you can feel a little bit better. Then it isn't there as much. And they kind of go hand in hand, but it's also a continued investment in it as being correct. Well, I think and I'm so quick to forget how little evidence that there is when I do think a certain thing and then it isn't what I thought. There's never like oh yeah, I've been wrong about that a lot. I've been wrong about that like perpetually, forever, all the time. I've been incorrect, and yet I'm not willing to look at that. And so if you're not if you're not looking for something, it's not there. If you're not looking to reinforce an idea. And another beauty is that it reinforces itself one way or the other. It's a perpetuated cycle. So both options are always right there right now. Both are right there right now. And the choice that you have is to focus on a conceptual idea, your assumptions about your conceptual idea, your opinion, your judgment, your perception, believing it's the truth, or being willing to recognize that it isn't. And the more you recognize that it's not, that it never is, the less weight it has to it. But as long as you think it has, there's a degree of weight there. But it's an option not to look at. It doesn't mean that the weight goes away. It just drops a tiny bit. And then drops a tiny bit, drops a tiny bit. It gets a little bit easier, but it's still moment to moment to moment to moment. You being willing to be uncertain or your desire to be sure.
It's funny that we often say, your willingness to be uncertain, but it's really your willingness to be intelligence. It really is. It's not even your willingness to be intelligent because that's egotistical. That's about you individually. But it's your willingness to let go and be reality, which is intelligence manifest. And this is something that I'm finding more and more all the time in conversations as they pop up, in events in my life as they pop up, the timing of things. If I'm not in the way trying to get somewhere, if I'm not in the way needing some end result, if I'm not in the way with my preferences and my opinions and my fears and all of that stuff, and I just watch moment to moment, and as opportunities present themselves based on that feeling like this is the appropriate thing to do in this moment, not because of how it reflects on me, but because it seems to fit properly. It becomes more of a sensitivity thing. And as you do that, you start to recognize that everything is really acting intelligently. Everything really is acting intelligently. It's just that we have this divisive perception that we're all doing this separately. Like you're intelligent, I'm intelligent, Joe Blow down the street's a fucking dumbass, and so we compare the intelligence that way. But the only difference is how much we are all distorting the actual intelligence that is reality. Reality is intelligence manifest constantly. When we talk about evolution or how things just miraculously turn into life after given enough fucking time, that's because things are intelligent. And given the right environment, that intelligence finds a way to continue to grow and adapt and expand. Life is intelligence. We make the mistake of thinking that, because life isn't walking around going, look at all of these concepts that you must know, because life is intelligent enough not to use concepts. Life is intelligence, whereas concepts is more of a degraded form of intelligence. It's kind of like that old joke where the owner's looking at his dog and he says, if you were smarter, you'd be able to talk. And the dog's thinking, if you were smarter, I wouldn't have to.
I love it. And you can't improve intelligence at play. You can only get in the way. You can only ever fog it, hold it back, get in the way of intelligence playing out by thinking that it's intelligent, by thinking that it's separate. Like there's intelligence at play, period. And then anything that's in the way of that, any idea of what the fuck that intelligence is, idea of yourself, idea of other people, ideas of anything is just getting in the way of that playing out. But there's not a way to improve it playing out. There's not a way for it to be better because it's not something that could even be different in a sense. It's just what it is. You playing out in perpetuity, forever here and now. That's it. You can't improve that. How would you improve it? Well, I know how to improve it. That's getting in the way. Well, you would do this to improve. You try this, getting in the way, and it's that investment in the false certainty and oh well, I'm on this trajectory path. Whatever, I'm becoming something more than what I am. Like your intelligence at play. At play. I didn't even mean it in the sense of like playing, but intelligence at play. It's what it is. There's no direction to play. There's no destination to play. It's done for the sake. Play is done for the sake of play. That's what you are. And you can do that. It's an option. And it's fucking fascinating how we don't realize that we can do things for the sake of doing things. We can actually do something for the sake of doing it, for its own purpose, its own reward, its own thing in itself, not to get somewhere else. It's such an addiction. Getting somewhere, striving for something. The control that comes with the sense of control, the feeling of control that comes with thinking, oh, if I act this way, if I do this thing, then this. If I say this, then this. Like you don't know. You don't know. There is no certainty or control or guarantees. Period. It's just you here now. That's all that you know. So you might as well be it. Might as well stop fucking not playing in it. Not be like you're it. You right now are it. You're not going anywhere. You're not getting anywhere. You're not becoming anything. It's just you and your willingness to be it here. and prioritize your experience for what it is as opposed to for what it's turning into, because you can keep thinking you're turning into something for your whole fucking life, and it's never getting you to the spot that you think you're getting to. Just getting you here, and you're already here, so might as well just fucking be it.
Because again, you're enough until you question it. You're enough. Even when you question it, not only are you enough, you're enough and enough to question it. Isn't that funny? But this is why we're doing this episode live today, frankly, is because I really want to make this fucking clear. I'm not thinking about this shit. I'm not thinking about this shit. People come to me with questions. People come to Andrew with questions, and you need to know this is what happens. Somebody asks a question. We have maybe a small moment of, huh. And then we open our mouths and things come out. And that's what this is. That's all this fucking is. This is just us being intelligence, not being intelligent. Because you'll notice that there's a very big difference between somebody trying to be intelligent and somebody who's just being intelligence, because intelligence has a flow. It doesn't take itself seriously. There's a humility to it. Intelligent people, though, they like being intelligent. They like how it reflects on them. It's about them. It's not about how well they integrate with the rest of them. It's about the very little idea of them not seeming so stupid, not seeming so little, not seeming, like it's not enough. Now I'm intelligent. No, you're intelligence. We're all intelligence. And because we're all intelligence, because there is no division, you are not more fucking special just because you have an insight. You are not a high consciousness individual just because you're starting to figure this shit out. We're all the same fucking individual. All that comparison shit does is get you bogged back down in the journey. It just gets you bogged back down in the fucking idea that you need to be something. You don't. You're already it. You're everything. You can't possibly be more than everything. You just can't. The fact that you get to experience one tiny little part of everything you are, and that is all encompassing, it takes up everything that you're doing right now, is a fucking gift. It's a gift, because the rest of it is all still happening and it's all still you. And the beautiful part about all of this is the fact is that, as Andrew was just saying, we're at play until we make it work. This is the universe doing what it does. It doesn't consider it an effort. Reality doesn't consider existence to be an effort. That's all a matter of perception.
And it's so interesting because I've done this for so long, turning this into something like the conversation of just being yourself into a measurement process, a feeling of getting somewhere, turning into something. But it's just you have an idea of you that gets in the way of you being you right now. And if that idea isn't there much, what's left is you. And it's not this conceptual idea. Like it's just that right there. Like that is the fucking wall. That's the veil. That's the idea. Because if there isn't so much of a maintained idea of you, a maintained idea of myself, it's just playing out. There's nothing to judge anymore if you're not holding on to an idea. And that's just it. It's not about, well, am I doing the right thing? Right according to what? Right according to what? Relative perception. Wrong according to what? Relative perception. There's no control in that. There's no certainty in that, but it's just playing out. It doesn't get you to a place that allows you to feel better about things. It's just there isn't something telling you that there's something wrong. It's not telling you. You're not telling yourself that there's a different way that you should act. You're not maintaining this constant judgment about how things are going. And so what's left is just you going. And that's just like be there and do it. It's like, well, am I doing it correctly? There's no correct. There is no correct. Even when you do start getting caught up in some judgment or something, like just recognize you don't have to do that. That's it. It's not necessary. It's not benefiting you. It's not getting you anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Like I think you said earlier today in one of our calls, maybe on Patreon, that there's this idea that judging yourself eventually gets you to a point where you're not judging yourself. It's like that doesn't make any fucking sense. But I've kind of thought that. I've kind of thought that. Oh, I just have to. I judge myself, then I'll learn, and then I'll learn to what? To stop judging
Judge.
yourself so goddamn much. Like, that's it, but at the same time, you're judging everyone else. By default, you're gonna judge yourself. You're taking that perspective as truth. Taking any perspective that you have of anything as truth. Take your perspective that comes up about yourself. It's gonna come up. It's gonna pop up. But it doesn't you don't have to take it as truth. You can recognize that it's not until you're just being it. You're just doing it. And until you take a second and be like, yeah, but how am I doing? Oh yeah. I don't I don't have to know that. I don't have to do that. Like, how you're doing is just what you're doing. There's no how well it's going. You can you can make up some judgment, some relative judgment for how it's doing relative to your assumption about something else, but it's just an assumption relative to another assumption. That's all it ever is. Just be the you that you are. The spot that you're trying to get to is that you're judging yourself for getting to or not getting to is a lack of judgment. So you can just stop judging yourself right now because you don't know.
That means you have to let go of the idea of comfort, of there being a right way to live, and that is often the case, right? Like, when we're judging ourselves in the ambition of getting to somewhere where we're gonna be okay now, where everything's gonna be perfect, where we don't have anything to worry about, where we're comfortable, we have control, we all this, because that's ultimately the driving ambition behind the carrot and stick mentality, is to get to a point where there's no more carrot and fucking stick, right? Or it's all carrot and no stick. You ever heard of Seneca? He was a Stoic.
I have. Yeah.
Interesting part about Seneca was that he was very rich. He was a very wealthy person, and he would go out of his way to make his life more difficult. He would take whole periods of time where he would just disavow all of his shit and go sleep on the ground, and it was to experience the things that all of the other people around him were afraid of. So that way he could recognize it wasn't worth fearing. That was the whole point. They lived in fear of poverty, of losing everything. And he's just like, yeah, I did that last Tuesday. Wasn't that bad? What are you so worried about? It's because you're defining yourself, because you're holding on to your shit. And it was because of that that ultimately Seneca ended up avoiding an attempt to assassinate him. He had pissed off Caesar at the time. And so Caesar wanted to have Seneca poisoned. But Seneca ate nothing but berries and drank water. And so he wasn't able to get it into his food because he was too simple of a person.
Oh, that's pretty fucking incredible. I'm gonna look into Seneca. But that's interesting because that oh fuck, I had a point. It'll come back. But yeah, the willingness. Oh yeah, because there's this illusion that comfort and freedom go together. Like that there's a point where you do enough shit, buy enough shit, have enough shit that you become free. Like, that's not it at all. It Freedom doesn't come down to how much you accomplish or where you're at in life or what people think of you or any of those things. It's so interesting because that discussion of being free, being free in yourself has nothing to do whatsoever with your circumstance, with how people perceive you at all. It's actually the attachment to the perceptions as truth, to thinking they mean something, to thinking that your perception means something, your own perception, your own opinion, your own judgment, your own thoughts about things taken as truth that is the wall between you and freedom. Like, you are the wall. Your idea of you is the prison that's built by your opinions. Oh, I don't like this. I don't know what's going on. A lot of things are changing. That means it's bad. No, it doesn't. It does not. But there's almost this, and especially with the whole, oh, gotta know yourself. You gotta know it's the most important thing you can ever do. Know yourself. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, you gotta settle upon an idea and then hold on to that forever, resisting the change that you are, the change that you're always embodying, despite your opinion, despite your perception, despite your judgment. It's like shit's going to keep changing. Buckle up. But also, you don't have to, because you are the change happening. Like you're seamlessly interconnected to the change. You are the change happening. There's no you that's buckling up to anything even. And it like the perception of division, it causes me to think that there is some me that exists separate from everything. But if I'm not thinking about myself, if I'm not holding on to some opinion, like there isn't necessarily. It's just things are happening. Like until you pause and you're like, how is this going? How am I doing? It's like you're being that intelligence. You're it until you stop to wonder how it's going, to think about how you're doing. That's just it. How's it going? How am I doing? What's happening? Let me figure that out quick. As opposed to just being it's like you were doing it until you fucking stopped and questioned it and wondered, am I doing it? How am I doing? Let me make a bunch of fucking assumptions and then I'll be able to keep going. Going where? To the next point that you stop judging yourself?
Yeah, that's the point. Eventually, I'll get there. I just got to judge myself to get there. Yeah, that's the short circuit. That's really what it is. We had one of the community sent me. Well, actually, he tagged both of us, I believe, on Instagram. It was this picture, and it was Buddha sitting up on his raised little platform and saying, "Be here now." And the people around him are like, "Well, how far is that? How do we get there? How am I going? Where am I going? How long will it take?" And he's just like, "Just be here now." And the whole point is that all of those things are just the avoidance of the ultimate realization, which is not really an ultimate realization at all. Like it's not. If anything, it's a cessation of you trying to need a realization. It's just sitting in what you are. And it's just that we spend so much of our time trying to be something that seems like it's fucking groundbreaking. And yet, if you go and hang out with a 4-year-old, you don't even have to have the conversation. They're too busy doing it. It's just that we forgot. We got caught up in the world of being an adult. And I find that shit just hilarious because that is by far the biggest con. The fact that all of a sudden you've changed from a child to an adult. There's no line there. There's no line there. Sure, arbitrarily, it's like, well, you're this big, and therefore alcohol will have less of an impact on your brain, so you can drink. And that's really it. Like when it comes down to like the line for being an adult, it's where we can basically say that, if you do shit to yourself at this point, it's your fault. It's on you. That's more or less it. But that isn't enough. Like to say now you're an adult at this age is different than actually having somebody who's self-aware and responsible, who's going to recognize that what they do from moment to moment to moment is on them. Because that is adulthood. Adulthood isn't different from being a child at all. It's the same lesson. And yet we seem to divide them. Like, oh, well, being a child was this. No, being a child is fucking hard. Being a child is fucking hard. It's ridiculously hard because you don't know shit. You don't understand shit. Everybody around you is telling you what to do. And you're just awash of all of these experiences trying to work that shit out. Find some patterns in a place that you've never seen patterns. You don't even know what a fucking pattern is when you start. Right. And so being a child is really, really hard. We look at our lives now. We're like, oh, being an adult is really hard. Yeah, because you make it hard. You make it far fucking harder than it needs to be. Think about it. All the biggest problems you had as a child, not knowing how to read, not knowing how to write, not knowing how to do math, not knowing how to speak, not being able to be big enough to get something off the top fucking shelf, not being able to strong enough to go downtown by yourself, not like all of those things are practically addressed by the fact that you've grown up. You can now go and do all those things. Where does the hardship come from in your life? From you. It comes from you judging your progress every step of the fucking way. At what point did that become the name of the game? Oh, right, school.
Yeah, and that one, it really drives that home. It's so interesting how that desire for, yeah, over and over and over and over, let's beat this fucking judgment, judge your progress. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? Weekly pop quiz, weekly test, test here, test there. Like the fact that that is a constant, it's like, oh, it's really fucked up. It's like really, really fucked up because, like, as an adult, there's like work and jobs and stuff, but like the way that school is structured is like its own thing. It's
Oh, it's like prison. I was watching Shawshank Redemption recently with my daughter, and first time she's ever watched it. Great movie for sure. But every single time she's ever seen a scene in a movie about a prison, she always goes, "That's what my friends are going through in school." It always ties together. The cafeteria line, me having to ask to go to the bathroom, things like that. That's all prison. That's the only place that we really experience that. Because if you go get a job and you keep going to your boss, like, "Can I go use the bathroom?" They will tell you it's right there. Like, you can figure that shit out. But if you have to go to the bathroom in class, you have to ask. You have to ask. How fucked up is that? Who the fuck is this person at the front of the school or at the front of the class teaching you a single subject for an hour a day, but telling you to control your bladder because they don't want you to inconvenience them? And the only reason they can is frankly because you're too young to do anything about it. You're too small to do anything about it. And your parents don't fucking care enough to take you out of there. So you are their bitch. And they fucking know it. And while it has gotten better over time, in other words, they don't smack you over the knuckles with a fucking meter stick anymore. The fact is that they beat you down psychologically every fucking day while they're looking for disorder after disorder after disorder, which would explain why you won't listen to their ridiculous fucking demands that you do everything they fucking say. There's got to be something wrong with you, right?
oh my god, the comparisons to jail are unreal. Like it really did. Like I've started reading a bit, but like there's so many things that I did enjoy growing up. Like even writing. Like I can remember elementary school and I loved like I had a like these short stories I would write about a lizard that would like travel around the world and like the universe and just have all these wild stories and like I really enjoyed doing that stuff and over time it was like gotten more and more like do it for a reason. Holy fuck, like do it for the grade, do it for the thing. Oh, you want to go to a good college, right? You want to cuz then that'll set you up for the best job and you want to get a good job, right? Because then you make lots of money and then you can get this and that and this and that. And it's like, okay, for what though? Like what's the end of that? It's like, well, safety, security, comfort, not fucking freedom. In no way is any of it freedom. Like we start off not being free. We start off in a prison. Think like our whole fucking structure, nothing is driving towards freedom. No wonder it's not talked about. No wonder everyone's walking around like they have a fucking stick up their ass, talking so concerned, so hesitant, so afraid. Because there's never any point. It's like, what's the point of all this? And then we're like, talked about this morning too, but it's like, oh, I keep striving, keep striving, keep striving for what? For what? So you die? Well, then you go to heaven. Then you go to this magical place. And no one fucking thinks about heaven for more than a second. It's this comfortable thing, but animals don't go to heaven. Nature doesn't go to heaven. Nothing fucking goes to heaven. Those people that you don't like that are still pretty nice, like they're going to heaven. All the people that you probably do enjoy and appreciate aren't. And also, which fucking version of you is going to heaven? Exactly. Is it the one that was born? Is it 2-year-old you? Is it 80-year-old you? Because both of those would kind of suck. So is it just a bunch of 20 to 45-year-olds up there chilling, but you can't hook up with each other? You want to get off it. It's like, no, can't do that, because those are all mortal sins. All the things that all the passionate things you do, those are all mortal sins. So if you do want to do anything, you got to get married. Who are you going to get married to? You're going to stay with that person for eternity? Because what is marriage now? Well, is that an eternal thing, or is that just temporary? Well, then you got to get a divorce. But then you leave heaven and go to hell. So which part of you is which version of you is going to heaven? How exactly does that play out? Because there's no animals, no nature. It's just, what is it? Just concrete walls with a bunch of people walking around. It doesn't make any sense if you actually look at it and think about it. It's like, oh, it's just everything I ever wanted. But what if someone else wants something different? Or do you have different heavens? Oh, so then you're alone in heaven, because it's just what you want, but the other people want something else. So which is it? What is it? What does it look like exactly? "Ugh, stop that! That's disrespectful. How dare you do that?" Like that's
So
just
forgive me.
exactly. God damn, it's fucked. It's so
I love it. Oh, I see. It's an ongoing source of entertainment for me more than anything else, and it's just because, I mean, frankly, religion has lost a lot of its teeth over time. It really has. Once upon a time, religion was the schooling system. Like when you were brought into the world, you were brought into your culture's religion, and that was the basis for your judgment, the basis for your education, the basis of everything you needed to know, whether you were studying the Torah or the Quran or the New Testament or whatever it might be. You were judged based on your knowledge of that. Can you quote chapter and verse? Can you do all of that? And religion has lost a lot of its teeth over time, to the point now where they use copper fucking goblets instead of gold, which is really satisfying to me. But it's just because that game became a little bit too obvious, and it led to too many fucking wars. At the end of the day, too many religious wars, and that led to a lot of bloodshed over time. And so we had to figure out a new way to judge ourselves. And we did so in the name of education. We did so in the name of progress and technology and building a better world. And it got out of hand. The schooling system is one of those things that, it's like, well, has nothing to do with religion. No, it kind of does. It really does. It worships at the altar of ego. It worships at the altar of judgment. It worships at the altar of control. For sure, that's what it is. I mean, all of your schools are basically churches, right? They're just churches that worship a different mentality. They're not worshiping a god. They're worshiping the idea of progress. They're worshiping the idea that you have to fit into the whole. You have to fit in to what's happening around you, and that's what they're there to do, is condition you to that. That's all the church was too, except they were calling the game. Right. So I find it really interesting. There's this great book by Terry Pratchett called Small Gods, and it's one of the standalone books in his Discworld series. But what's really interesting about it is they make the case in this that the gods in this world only exist through belief. The more people believe in them, the stronger they become, the more of a force that they become. And so you can see right there that that's kind of symbolism, because the more people believe in something, the more that those people have a sway over the all of reality. This is why we had so many religious wars and whatnot. But what the point of the story was is that as gods lose their followers, they become weaker. But that doesn't mean the church falls around them. And so the premise of this book is, in fact, that the church of this one God is bigger and stronger than it's ever been. And yet nobody actually believes in that God. They just fear the system that was built around it. And that's very much the case with our system. Very few of us actually believe in the schooling system. We're just afraid to question it. We're just afraid of the consequence of not following along. We're afraid of the consequence of being left behind by society. We're afraid. And so we follow out of fear largely. And our parents instill that shit into us. Well, you gotta go through socialization. I went through that. That's how I got my job. You gotta get in there too. I mean, what's gonna happen in your life? I've heard it all, homeschooling my daughter along the way. It's just, and again, it's just the fact that we're afraid to stand on our own. We're afraid to make our own way. We're afraid. And so they offer us a pill and they say, take this and it'll lead to happiness and control and everything that you could think that you might possibly want. You'll be valuable, you'll be loved, you'll be respected, you'll fit in with the group. And what's funny is that anybody who's gotten out of high school and struggled to make it in the working world or even figure out whether or not they can be happy just moment to moment to moment knows that it's a complete crock of shit.
Such a massive fucking complete crock of shit. Holy fuck. Like, I obviously went through school, did pretty well, like, went to a college that people say is a good school. I like nothing. I didn't learn anything. Like, I straight up don't know if I learned anything. Some of the math stuff, because I actually enjoyed that growing up, like, kept in mind, whatever. Some of it, not all. Like, the calculus shit, don't remember that at all. Like, it's so fucked. Because, like, even the classes that I don't remember anything from, I got good grades in them. I did well in them. I was I was like I did all the things. I did all the things. And yet, looking back, it's like, okay, so what exactly was it for? Oh, was it just what was it for? Just to keep kids busy while the people who already went through it now are working and making money and you know now at this point giving 20 to 30% of it back to the system.
Well, think about it. After 12 years of learning to do what you're told, you get really good at doing what you're told.
Oh god, it's so fucking it's mind-blowing because even like I notice this in myself how like and oh god, it's uncomfortable for me to fucking recognize some of this shit, but like I am so much and I'm not putting it's like my fucking shit, my responsibility, but like if I and this was something that hit me recently. I went through so many fucking uncomfortable realizations recently, but on the other side, and it's fine. It doesn't, I'm not judging myself for going through it, but like I worked really hard. Like growing up, I was always getting somewhere, doing something for the sake of doing it. And if there was a path, if there was a journey, if there was a structure, it's like, yeah, just put your head down and grind that shit out. And I would. And it was because I was for the next thing. It was always like it was like almost literally looking at a carrot. Like it was, yeah, oh yeah, getting there. Oh, ba, 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 ba. Oh yeah, getting there. All right, how am I doing? Yeah, we're getting there. And it was like literally, holy fucking shit, dude. Like my whole life was that. And so I'm fucking 28 and I'm just just learning how to do things for the sake of doing them in my decision to do it, not for anything else. And it's like, it's weird. I'm not gonna lie, it's fucking weird and uncomfortable. And like, it was so drilled into me to do things for something else that when there isn't something else, it's like I'm sitting on my thumb. I'm like, okay, fucking do something. And it's just that. But it's like I'm subconsciously looking for a reason, for a guiding hand. And it's
Or a gold star.
or a or a pat on the back or a someone else telling me, giving me input onto that. Oh, oh, you got into
That's it.
oh my god.
That's the reason. That's the reason that I have such an issue with the schooling system, is that it's never just enough to be you. You always have to jump through the next hoop, and you are always evaluated according to all of the other kids. And it's the most superficial way of trying to raise children, of trying to, help a human being grow, because it immediately develops this idea that you can be so easily compared. And so you start to believe that you can. All of a sudden, some kid gets a higher mark on math. You actually think to yourself, well, they're better than me. And you feel like you are less because of it. That kid could be 6 months older than you. Oh, we're all in the same grade. Yeah, and And like at 8 years old, a month of development time means worlds. 6 months especially. We forget that. We really do. It's like, "Oh, I was the youngest person in my grade." Do you have any idea how much that set you back compared to everyone else who was fucking like 8, 10 months older than you? Had 8 to 10 months more development time? Like, it might not seem like much now that you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, but think about that, okay? Every year of your life as you grew up was 12 months that you had never existed before. By the time you're 8 or 9 years old, you've experienced 100 months ish. Every one of those are sizable in terms of how much you develop. Every single day of your childhood is huge. And yet we gather kids together. We're like, oh, they're all in grade 5. They're all at the same level. Let's test them all in the same fucking way. It is the dumbest shit.
So dumb. I'm curious because I'm a May birthday. You're July. Were you old or young for your grade?
I was young.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm curious if you look at that and which side of self judgment versus feeling good. Because like I was young too, and how much despite doing well, like, I got good grades pretty much my whole life up until it was the shift kinda happened in, middle school. I've talked about it before. I went 5th grade to ninth grade to a hardcore Catholic school, and it was ninth grade when it turned into high school that it was hell. It was fucking hell. Like, I straight up told my mom because it was, and I think I've maybe have told this story before, but, my sister who was 2 grades younger than me, so there was a school different school. It was a Catholic school, but it wasn't like this. Like, it was like fucking I'm not gonna say any comparisons because it would offend someone, but yeah, it was fucked. It was really fucked. Like hardcore Catholic conservative. And my sister visited another school. She was in 7th grade. That school started in 7th grade, went through 12th. And she got home and she was like, "Oh, it was awesome." She was just raving about it. Like, "Oh, it's nothing like Providence Academy," which is where we were going at the time. And I'm like listening, or I had just come down from like 4 hours of homework, and I was like, meanwhile, I'm fucking 14 at the time, just get it after being in school for 7 hours, getting done with my 4th hour of homework, where and I would sometimes just sit there, just feeling so much weight of, like, so much shit from, like, 8 different classes, work in every class, homework in every class, and I was like and this was always the thing I wondered. I was like, do my teachers know that I'm in other classes? Like, are they aware that there's 7 others? Or do they think that I'm just going to theirs? Do they know that this is a 7-hour day? Or do they think their class is the only class? I would always and I haven't even remembered that since, but I come down, I'm like, sort of sheepishly like, "Mom, can I visit? Can I visit that school?" She was like, "Oh, well, yeah, I think so." She's like, "You don't like you don't like Providence?" I was like, "It's hell. It's hell." And she'll tell that story and we laugh about it now, but it's like, holy shit, it's insane. And I don't remember where I started that point with, but it's fucked how much it
Yeah.
gets
And what's
drilled
worse, it
home.
has the justification of being in your best interest. That's the worst part about it. And you ask about your teachers whether they know or not. Frankly, they're just doing what they're told. They just want a paycheck. They're just doing what their job is. They're not thinking about you. As much as a lot of teachers start in the industry, in the same way a lot of politicians start out, with hope to change the system. After enough time, paying your bills, getting shit on by your boss when they're having a bad fucking day, dealing with kids, especially kids who are imprisoned. And after a while, you start to, well, they don't appreciate me. And no, of course they don't, Warden. Of course they don't. And you may not want to look at it that way, but that's exactly how the kids see it. And we forget that because we grew up and we dialed that shit out. As soon as we got out of high school, we started justifying it like, oh, we all go through that. Pass the beer. And we fucking get into the drinking hardcore. Why? To deal with the goddamn trauma. To deal with all the anxiety, all the self-judgment, all the fucking comparison, all the shit that we've just learned for 12 fucking years or more. And then we just bury it. We bury it and we do our best to just get by in the fucking world after realizing that the world doesn't work anything like we were just taught. Nobody gives a fuck if you were a fucking, the king of the fucking soccer team in high school anymore. Once you're out of high school, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody cares. Play your little ball. Nobody gives a shit. I've got bills to pay. Right? And it changes fucking everything. And so we bury everything that we went through. We focus on what we're doing. We try and find some semblance of happiness, not even recognizing how much we've still been conditioned to jump through hoops to try and get somewhere where we will be more, where we will be happy, where we can graduate from being fucking human. And that's really all it is. And so then we get old enough, we tune it out long enough, and then we put our kids in it. And it's just gone on like this for a long time.
And we wonder why kids are depressed and committing suicide. And it's like, what the fuck are you looking at?
Oh, it's got to be TV. It's the music.
Oh, it's social media. It's so it's a terrible. Oh, it's the devil. It's like they just went through 12 to 16 years straight of constantly being measured, being judged, being compared, because there isn't even a line. It's just in relativity. It's just you relative to everyone else. We had a comment here. It's the weed. Devil's lettuce. Oh, it's ruining people's lives.
But isn't it funny that we vilify everything these kids reach for just for some cessation of the stress? Like no matter what it is, oh, they're on social media too much. Oh, they're watching too much TV. Oh, they're it's like, yeah, well, no shit. The rest of the fucking time you have them working like they're a 40-year-old dude. Like you have them working full-time fucking jobs. No shit they want to play. No shit they want to tune out. No shit they want to break. And no, that's why they're not getting to work. Fuck you and your work. You're not even happy. You're telling these kids they got to do what you do?
It's unreal. Like, oh my god, the whole your whole time's up, party's over sort of thing it's starting to hit more and more and more because it's ridiculous. Like it's right in front of my face. Like it's right in front of our faces. And I feel like I'm just getting to a point where I'm finally like seeing that instead of being in it, even in it just since Dualistic Unity, since we went full time, basically. I'm just and I gotta not judge myself for like because that's just a familiar fucking avoidance tactic. It's
There it is.
yeah. And it is, yeah, exactly. But it's like I'm finally fucking starting to see things and progressively over the last even 8, 9 months. It's been like we're doing something that isn't because even at work is like the same sort of process of getting somewhere, becoming something. That's what I realized too when I stopped trying to get promoted, striving for promotion. That was a shift. I was like, wait a second. Holy fuck. Oh my God. They really do just dangle that. And I was kind of aware of it, but also kind of not. It was like, you get a promotion, and then it's like you enjoy that for maybe a month, maybe 2 max. And then it's like, all right, let's and then you meet with your boss and you're like, all right, what are we working on now to get to the next promotion? And when because we were doing this, doing the podcast, doing social media, and I was like, oh wait, I'm actually good with where I'm at. Like I was making a very, very good salary. I was like, wait a sec. And I took a second and I was like, wait a second. All right. So I'm kind of doing 2 things right now. I actually enjoy one of the things. I'm making more than enough money where I'm able to save actually a decent amount with my paycheck on top of my responsibilities. Why would I try and put more time into that takes away from the thing I actually enjoy and appreciate? And like my luckily the boss that I had that was like my 5th boss at that company was like a really good dude, really enjoyed like just solid guy. And so when I talked to him about that, I was open and honest, and he was fully aware of my social media stuff. And but like I still, did my job well, and so there was nothing that they could say that I wasn't doing it. And he was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's okay." And when I talked to him about like, yeah, I'm not really like I'm actually just I would just say like I'm actually just happy with where I'm at in my life, the things that I'm doing, the things that are going on. Like I'm not really pushing necessarily for that. And I was lucky because I know there were bosses in the past that would have wondered about that, or there would have been, it may not have been like a direct thing, but there would have been like an extra couple eyes on me. Like, well, let's make sure he's definitely doing everything he's supposed to be doing because he's not chasing that carrot we got 3 feet in front of him anymore. Let's make sure he's getting try still doing the same work. And I would have friends who were like, "Oh, what did I'm not gonna say his name, but like, what did your boss think of that? Like, what did like, is he okay with that?" Like, and they act like those are legitimate questions that I got. And I was like, "Holy fuck." And that right there, it was I don't know, a year or year and a half ago or so, like, that was a shift, like, holy fuck. They keep that hang that over your head to keep you going. Without that, it's because so it's clearly not even if you enjoy a job and people do, there's still that striving. It's like if you weren't doing the things that you're doing, if you weren't getting the things out of it that you were getting seemingly, like, would you still like it as much? So it's almost like I was in that fucking mentality for so long. It's been almost jarring, like, getting knocked around kinda like, "Okay, well, oh, it's just doing it for me. It's me making the choice for myself, doing the things that I wanna do because I wanna do it. Because like, I love everything that I'm doing right now, but there's still been, like, this lingering, like, lack of responsibility in a sense of doing it for me, just for me, for the sake it's like, if there's this undertone of this is work, there's still this, like, aversion to it, despite if I had all the money in the world, I'd still be doing the same exact thing that I'm doing. But there's still, like, this and I'm just fucking realizing it, like, in the last this is, like, a couple days ago. It's like, "Holy fuck, there's still that," but I can just do it for me. I don't have to have a reason necessarily. I can just do it for the sake. I don't have to think about it as a certain thing, categorize it, label it. Just fucking shut the fuck up and do it.
Yeah. And it's a shame that it takes us this long to get to a point where we can actually just stop, reassess, and look at life from our own perspective. I've mentioned this to you before, but the day my life changed was the day I realized I was living relative to everybody else. I was living according to everybody else's world, and that included the schooling system, the system as a whole, all of it. I was living according to what I thought everybody else thought was the way to live. At no point did I just fucking wipe the chalkboard clean and decide to start from scratch myself with what I thought, which was with what was important to me, because I hadn't been taught to do that. None of us have. We've always been taught to fit in with what everybody else thinks is the important thing to do. And this is the worst part about parents is a lot of times parents just raise you to validate what they've decided to invest in, right? They just want you to be another little mini version of them so that you can show how right they are in the choices that they make. And the fact is that each generation changes so much from the one before that shit just stagnates us. Like my kid is going to have insights and ideas and shit that I've never had. She's already having insights and ideas and shit that I've never had. And why is that? Frankly, because less people are taking up her fucking attention with their bullshit. That's really it. Less people are telling her to think this, and more people are like, "Hey, what do you think?" And so she's having a chance to express herself and explore whatever it is she wants to think. But we weren't really given that chance. And the system is terrified of a population of people who are not doing what they're told. Like that's really what it is. It throws everything into disarray. You got to remember, like The odds against the system are fucking stacked. Like, they never want us to look at that. They really rely on our conditioning. They rely on the fact that we do what we're told. We chase the carrot. We run from the perceived stick, right? And as such, we are very easy to keep in line. Just make sure you got a Black Friday sale from time to time, and we're good to go. But the fact is that there are so few cops. There are so few government officials. There are so few people who are actually, quote unquote, in control, that if you had a population of people who are just like, that's enough of your shit, it would all fall apart. There aren't enough jails to keep all the people who would say that's enough. And the system knows that. The system knows they can't beat us by numbers. They have to beat us by making us willing to submit.
It's gotta be. That's all that it's like this, and it's the perception of this, the idea of there being a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's like this fucking massive farce that you're getting some, and we just drop things in like, you know, heaven, or certain fears of certain things. Well, if we're not in control, if you don't follow this, then anything could happen. Like, yeah, that's exciting from a certain perspective, but the the realization, and your daughter is very lucky to have that, because even the thought of, like, the question, "Well, what do you think?" Like, I don't know if I was asked that until I got my first job, and even then I was like, "Can you tell me where I should start?" Like, where, like, oh my god, school, it's like, this is the way we're just learning things. It's a one-way street. School is a one-way fucking street. Even when you get the opportunity to express something, it's a one-way street in the sense that you're going to get graded and judged. And so, you better follow the guidelines. You better fall in between. You better color in between the lines. Yeah, you can pick which color as long as it's between the lines. Like, even when there is the opportunity to choose a little bit, it's like, we'll give you a little bit of space to wiggle around here for a second. Give you a little wiggle. It's like, can I wiggle a little more? No, bitch, you're stuck there. There are these confines, and you have to live within them, because you wiggle too much, we can't control you anymore. And if you wiggle too much, both theoretically, or literally physically, we will give you medication. If you start wiggling too much, you're getting drugged. So you stop wiggling so goddamn much. And like, that's the process. But holy fuck, school is a one-way street. You learn things. You go to history class to learn about history. You go to math class to learn math. There's never a, okay, but what about thinking about, like, where did the math stuff come from? The people we're learning about, where did they learn to do all the things? It's not.
That's actually a memory for me. I just wanted to mention that very quickly, that I remember very clearly in, I think it was a grade 9, math. My math teacher at the time was a substitute gym teacher. And so they didn't have a math teacher at the time. So they took this gym teacher who was fresh out of school, had never taught math a day in his fucking life. And they basically put him in charge of the class for the entire semester. And he was as insecure got. And so he was just more or less like, just follow along in the books, just read this chapter. And I remember one day I was just like, hold up, I have a question. We keep using pi. Where the fuck pi come from? Easy enough question, right? Like, I just want to understand. We keep using this number. I'm down. I have no problem with the number and the little sign and the whole thing. Cool. No worries. Why is it there? He got so pissed off. I got kicked out of that class. It's because he didn't know. He didn't know, and he could not admit he did not know. All he could do was reconcile the fact that I wasn't being a good student because I wasn't doing what I was told.
Holy shit. And even that, I don't know. It's now, I would argue, my favorite quote ever by Anonymous. Just 3 little words. I was straight up told. I don't have specific memories, but I know I was told a number of times because I remember the feeling, the fear of not knowing, the fear of not knowing an answer, of not knowing what to say, not knowing how to act. It was a massive one for me. That worry, that concern. Oh, if they come to me, they're going around the class or asking, random questions. Oh, fuck, I forgot about that. Like the getting called on randomly. Holy shit. It's like you were always stressed. They fucking taught you stress. They built that shit into your experience.
It's a chemical imbalance in your brain.
Oh, god damn, dude. Oh my god. Like that's so fucked. Go like
We don't want to question it. We don't want to question it. We don't want to question the system that everything is fucking built on. We don't want to question the conditioning machine that is our schooling system. And so we make excuses all the time. And in doing so, we empower the pharmaceutical industry every step of the fucking way.
that's so it's really like don't let that shit weigh you down, but it gets dark. Like it's like a part of me is like, ooh, this is interesting how fucked up reality is, how fucked up the system is, how fucked up this mechanism of control, how far we've gone into control, like into the investment in control despite it not getting us anywhere. And oh god, the heaven thing's been killing me recently. But it's like because no one comes back and tells you, nah, it's a bunch of bullshit. And so it's like you can't not prove it. You can't prove it doesn't exist. It's like that is a fucking terrible argument. All these people, a billion people believe it. Another terrible argument. It's not a good argument. Do you get that? It's not even an argument. It's just pointing to a bunch of people who are afraid and desiring for there to be investing in something that requires them to believe in a payoff. And so they must believe it because of the way that they're living their life. To validate the way they're living their life, they have to believe that. Because if it wasn't there, they'd get fucking rocked. They would get fucking rocked if they were to really take a good look at that. And so even my little rant, which I'll probably turn into a video at some point about the reality of heaven. Would you really want to go to heaven? Have you ever taken 5 minutes to think about what heaven would be like based on the things that they tell you? That all of those things. Like heaven would fucking suck ass. Heaven would be a terrible fucking experience if it was exactly what they say that it is. But it's just this conveniently comfortable idea. It's like the cessation of all of my pain and suffering. It's like, well, can you maybe try and work on that now? It's like, no, because it's all these people's fault and it's all this thing and it's all this stuff and it's not my responsibility to deal with this because it's all these people it's their fault. It's they're triggering me. They're doing this. It's their thing. It's like that has just gone on for so long that now it's become this norm that we're not willing to question and feels too big to question. Like the school system just feels too big to question. It's like, have you ever wondered if maybe that's not the best way for kids to grow up? Have you ever wondered that? Like, well, then what would they do? Everyone else is at work. What would they do? They wouldn't, they'd have to be supervised by someone. It's like, yeah, it's a great question. What would they do? You keep living their life like we're not willing to find out because it's so fucking caught in that. But you can feel the shifts, the questioning, the willingness to let go of a little bit. It's like we're getting to a point that we're starting to realize, oh, maybe this payoff to this digging deeper and deeper and deeper into more and more false certainty and control isn't getting us to the place. And it's like we're starting to scratch our heads a little bit. And yeah, so that part's exciting. And you got you. So that's always important to remember.
See, that's it though, is that We have committed to technology and we've committed to the idea of progress so much over the last 100 years, 150 years, um, thinking that it would deliver us to the promised land of peace and happiness and ongoing comfortability. And it just doesn't deliver. What it has done is create a population of irresponsible people who are anxious as fuck and don't know what the hell life is all about. It's created an entire idea that we always have to be doing something and we can never just be what we are. So fulfillment and happiness and peace just isn't a part of our priority. And as such, it's not a part of our system. But as we start to recognize that that shit doesn't work, as it becomes overwhelmingly fucking obvious that this shit doesn't work, and we know this by the rise of mental health problems right now. We know this. Eventually, our priorities as adults start to change. Why do you think my daughter's homeschooled? My daughter is homeschooled because my priorities have changed. Because I've recognized that that mentality that raised me will never get me to where they promised it would go. Ever. And so my priorities have changed. And as such, the things I teach my daughter have changed. I've taught her to be herself. I remember very clearly meeting a parent who's like, what do you want your daughter to do when she gets older? I'm like, be happy. I don't fucking care. Like, I really don't care what she does. I don't care if she wants to be a plumber. I don't care whatever she wants to do. Cool. As long as she's enjoying it and feeling challenged and she's doing it for her own fucking reasons, that sounds like the ideal situation to me because it's not about just getting more. It's not about just having more. It's not about achieving more and being perceived by others because that shit wears thin real quick. It's like whoever designed this idea never made it past like 25, 30 years old. Like, this is how we're going to live. And they died. And everybody's just like, okay, we'll do that. But it's like, no, had that motherfucker lived another 20 years, they'd be like, I was so wrong. That's the whole point is that we have this short-sighted view of what reality is about. And it really was created by some asshole who I'm certain was benefiting off of other fucking people not thinking about it. We have a question here. And I want to address this because it's a goodish question. We have separate individuations of consciousness and physical bodies. The idea of universal consciousness suggests that we are all from a divine source. How to strike a balance and be at peace with it all. Okay, so this is why I want to address this question because while it's very interesting and it sounds relatively close to what the truth is, it's so wrong. We have separate individuations of consciousness and physical bodies. No, you don't, as a matter of fact. What you have is the perception of separation. What you have is the ongoing belief in separation, and the perception that you are divided is exacerbated by your commitment to your self-image. See, the more you are holding on to your idea of you, the more you perceive that you are separate from everything else, body and mind included. It's not actually the case. You can't be. You can't be separate. You can perceive yourself to be separate, but you're still being influenced by everything else. See, the whole thing is you're just fooling yourself. And you can do that. You are that limitless. You can fool that particular point of awareness. You can fool that eyeball into closing its eye. That's it. Doesn't mean that you're separate from the rest of the body just because you've closed the eye, right? But that's it. It's not that you're separate. You don't have a separate individuation of consciousness. You just perceive it that way because you're selfish and self-absorbed. You just perceive it that way because you want to look at yourself and to create. And that act of looking at yourself separates you from everything else perceptually and only perceptually. That's all it is. So it's not that you have a different individuation of consciousness. You have your own version of your ego.
And so it's not about coming connected closer to source. It's just when you don't have so much of a conceptual idea, you're not taking your opinions and judgments and perceptions as truth. It's just what's left. Like, that's it. It's just what's left. Just what's left. It's not, you don't get somewhere to get it. You don't become something to understand it. You're just it right now. You got a lot of bullshit in the way. A lot of ideas, beliefs that you're holding on to, thinking that they're correct and true. And that's just it. It's an investment in your thoughts as truth, that false certainty that comes with it. It's not this whole big grand like metaphysical sort of deal. It's just right here right now. You're holding on to a perception of yourself, a set of assumptions, and kind of amplifying that onto believing that everyone else thinks that as well. Whether it's purposefully or kind of subconsciously, there's this like assumption that everyone else is thinking the same thing about you. and they're not. And so what you are isn't what you think. And like it's just that. It's not to be something else. It's just that you're not that the assumptions that you have about yourself aren't true. And what's left is reality. What's left is what is. And that's kind of it. And there's yeah.
That's it. But we have a follow up. Okay. So whether or not it's a form of reality or a perception, there really is a difference. We still operate within this thought form. Well, you still experience reality through the perception of division. Without it, you would have no experience. This is true, but that doesn't mean that that experience is the truth. It doesn't mean that perception is reality. And I think it's important just to keep that in mind that you can invest in perception as much as you want to, but it'll never be reality. You said yourself that you have a daughter. I do. That implies separation too, doesn't it? No, I also have a spleen. That doesn't imply that it's separate from me. So how do we balance? We don't think about it. That's really it. Is the less you're thinking about yourself, the more in the moment you are, the more you are actually reality acting. And that's where insight lies. It's not about trying to understand unity consciousness. It's certainly not about trying to strike a balance between believing in divine consciousness and being yourself. It's about getting rid of the gap between the two because those are just conceptual. The reality is what you are right now, which means you can use concepts all you want, but if you believe you are those concepts, that's a whole other hell.
And so yeah, even the idea like it's all of the ideas, like it's not the idea. Your idea of the thing is not the thing. Like that's it. Your idea of you isn't you. And so it's not about this conceptual balance or finding a equilibrium or perfecting it. It's like it's already in balance. It's already in equilibrium. You're already what you're striving to be. You're already whole and complete. The you that you are right now, there's not a separate you that you're becoming. There's not a you that you get to because you recognize these things. Like, okay, I'm whole and complete as I am, which will make me better than I am right now, and it'll help me be more relaxed. And once I recognize that the me that I am right now is whole and complete, I will be more insightful. I will have more insights to pay. People will like me more than they do right now because I recognize that I'm whole and complete as I am, and so therefore I'll become something else. There's no other thing they become. It's the you that you are right now with all of the perceived faults that aren't really there so much when you stop wondering about all of the faults. When you stop thinking that you have faults, when you stop thinking there's something wrong with you, it's hard to come up with something that's wrong with you. All the things that you think are wrong with you aren't there when you're not thinking about them, when you're not thinking that there's something wrong with you. And we got a couple more follow-ups that it looks like Ray's reading.
We do
Yeah.
specifically, but your spleen is within your physical body. Your daughter is separate from your physical body. No, she's not. No, she's not. None of us are separate at all. That separation does not exist. Energy changes form. There is difference in how energy is expressed, but there is no separation in how energy is expressed. Again, this just comes down to the fact that you are really committed to your idea of yourself. That's really all this is, right? That idea requires you to see people as separate, but they're not. They're not separate. You could say my daughter is separate from me, but she is out there influencing the world all the time. And all of those influences eventually come back to me because there is no dividing line except conceptually. So even the idea of there's something being inside and outside of my body implies that this is my body.
And I was doing something kind of funny the other day. I was looking at myself in the mirror, but like not in like some, oh, how am I looking right now? Like I was looking into my eyes, like directly into my eyes, wondering what was looking into what. And things started getting really kind of trippy. It's like, what's looking into what right now? And I was staring, and even right now, because I can see my thing on the screen. Like, what is looking into what exactly? Like, where is it's like that's just it. There isn't.
And does it change when you look in my eyes?
No.
Yeah, that's the whole point. A friend of mine once said that reality is God looking at itself. I thought that was great because that's all we're doing. That's why we can empathize with one another is because we can see ourselves within that person.
Exactly. And it's as you said, like, it's not this big grand thing. It's just you have an idea of yourself that you're holding on to very tightly, and you think you're correct about it. Like, as that starts to crumble and it's even the subtlest things, like, I'm not even saying, like, you know, understand everything all at once all the time. It's just like, question one assumption, like, just one little thing. Because as one certainty tips, like, it opens up starts to open up the floodgates, like, the subtlest cracks, the willingness to not be think that you're absolutely sure about something is all that it is. And then it's just that over and over until all the familiar assumptions you've been holding on to aren't quite so much there in the forefront all the time, and you're more sensitive to new assumptions that you're making, so there's not new ones being added so much, and then you're just willing to say, "I don't know," to say, "I'm not sure." Even when you make an assumption about something, like, "Yeah, but it's not actually what it is," and you can recognize differences in yourself, different people, different things, but without a solidified, absolute idea of yourself relative to it in comparison, in judgment, in this divided, perceived divided mentality, like, there isn't so many other things. Like, the other things that you perceive are just ideas that you feel like you're sure of, that you're not actually sure of, that you're unwilling to question, that you just keep holding on to because you feel more comfortable thinking that you're correct despite not being correct.
But we're addicted to the answer because we're addicted to the question. So as long as we can't stop asking the question, we must always have an answer. And that becomes our entire focus. And eventually when you realize that none of the answers you're ever going to come up with are the truth, none of them are ever going to get you to the place where you feel at peace with yourself, then you start to answer that question with, I don't know. And that opens it up to eventually not having to ask the question at all, which is where we started this conversation. You don't have to ask if you're enough. You don't even have to consider it. The real question is, are you prepared to let go of the question? Are you prepared to arrive? Because the question is how you avoid being what you are right now.
Oh gosh, that goddamn question. If it's not there, like, there isn't so much that comes after it. It really is the root right there. That question, am I enough? Am I doing well? Am I doing things right? It's like, if that question isn't there, like, that addictive question, there aren't so many things telling you something one way or the other. So it's just that constant fucking nagging question. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the correct thing? Am I doing things well? Am I doing things poorly? Am I enough? Am I doing all right? Am I living life correctly? It's like, there is no right. There is no correct. There is no truth other than you're here now. It's like, there's no right way. Shut up and keep doing shit. There's no correct way. So you can keep stopping, checking in, take a step. Oh, did I take that step well? Take 3 steps. Did I take those 3 steps well? How are my next 3 steps going to be? How are they going to compare? How's that person's steps going? How are they doing? How am I doing relative to them? It's like, when you're not asking the questions, the judgment isn't there anymore. Like, it needs the question. It needs you to pause and wonder and contemplate how things are going for there to be even the ability to have a fucking answer. You don't have to ask. You don't have to keep asking. You're
Because having the answer does nothing for you. Having the answer doesn't mean shit about you. That's the thing. We all have fuck tons of answers. None of them are the truth.
none. None at all, ever. They've never been, they never have been, they never will be. They never are. Like, true. Like, you can keep asking the question, keep coming up with answers to cause you to keep asking the question, keep coming up with answers, and keep fucking running, looking over your shoulder, looking ahead, looking back over your shoulder, looking ahead. It's like you can keep doing that, or you can
And we'll give you a diploma eventually.
give you some gold stars, some oh my god, some titles, VP, managing director, CEO. Oh my god. It's like
Priest.
oh god. Oh, as if that makes you something. As if that means fucking jack shit about you. And guess what? No one really gives a fuck besides people who are wondering the same thing about themselves, striving for that thing. Everyone, everyone striving for it is going to look at it and look at you in a certain way, but only because they're insecure as fucking themselves. So the only people who give a fuck about any of those titles are insecure people. That's it. That's it. Just people who want to be that, not people who are whole in themselves. They don't give a fuck about the title, about the things, about the stuff, about all of those things. They don't care. And that sucks. That kind of sucks when someone comes around like, I'm this, I have this, look at all of these things. They're like, cool. You want to go chat? And you're like, wait a second. Why aren't you more impressed? Because they rely upon that impression, and positive impression to keep going for it to make any sense at all. They need that validation because you invested so much into getting there that you need that response from others because it's not for you. You're not doing it for you. If you we were talking about this on Patreon before. If you were on an island by yourself, you say you're dressing up just for yourself. You say you're wearing those things just for yourself. You're saying you're living your life for you. If you were on a deserted island, would you make the same decision? Would you wear the same thing? Would you act the same way? Would you do the same things? If not, just be willing to look at that. I'm not saying you should do something else. Just the willingness to wonder, to scratch your head, to think, oh, maybe I wouldn't, because then you're not living for you, and you're living in relativity, and that's not freedom. If you're not living for yourself, you're not free. You're at the will of other people's perceptions who don't really give much of a shit unless they're insecure in themselves. Like, the only people who really care about the stuff outside of you being yourself are insecure people in one way or another, whether they're striving to be you, stroking that ego of yours, or they're judging you. It's just because they're insecure. If they're not insecure, they want to know you. They care about you for you. And that's it. They don't give a fuck about any of the other things because it's irrelevant to you and your freedom.
That's just the thing, though, is that if I think I am what I think, then what I think, just the act of thinking, becomes so much more important. Everything's riding on it. Everything is riding on those thoughts being perfect, on those thoughts being right, on those thoughts being intelligent. And it's because I believe that I am what I think. So I must be intelligent instead of just being intelligence. And it really is just that. It's that idea of myself that cuts me off from everything that I am because I filter it all down into this fiction that creates a conflict with reality. And that's really it. But it starts with the need for an answer because the only person who needs an answer is someone who's measuring themselves according to it. This has been a very Good episode. I appreciate everybody who could join us today. I do want to mention very quickly this episode will not be aired for a couple of weeks because we still have a number of classic episodes that I'm editing beforehand. But if you're listening to this right now and you would like to join us in Vancouver on October 5th, we have a retreat coming up, the last mini retreat of this year. We would love to see you there if you can make it. If you can't make it, do consider the Netherlands. But this has been a fantastic conversation. And it's because, frankly, there's nowhere to go. We're not trying to give you answers. We're not trying to teach you shit. I am spending my afternoon at home having an interesting conversation because I like to do so. I'm talking to myself. Sure, there are other voices that I'm hearing, but that doesn't make them any less mine. And so the fact is that this is an exercise in just being. You're listening here and participating in this episode is an exercise in being. And look at all of this without any need for an answer, without any need to define yourself, without any need to be right. We have all just fucking grown together.
This has been a blast. I'm glad we made this a live party here. Appreciate everyone for tuning in because it's fun. It's like I'm glad there was a look into how these how these go. I mean, there's the raw episodes and those are always alive, but yeah, this is the classic episode. It's the same shit. It's just the same shit.
There are differences.
Yeah.
There are differences. For example, we know going into this conversation that we had a track that we were on. We didn't know where it was going, but it's always fun to watch as you witness your own intelligence playing out that it really does find its way to go full circle. It actually did so a few times in this episode. There's quite a few really good loops as we just kept going through the same process of recognition, but it's not because we were trying to get to an answer or an end result. It's because we didn't need to. And so it's just the process of watching reality play out patterns. And it happens all the time. If you get out of the way, you will see your life really does play out intelligently. All your relationships play out intelligently. People mirror what you are going through, whether you recognize it or not. And the only reason you can't recognize it is because you're focused on your idea of yourself rather than allowing yourself to see what you're really doing. So yeah, this has been just a blast. Thank you, everyone who could join us. We'll be back tomorrow. I think we have a roundtable or a call-in show tomorrow on Tuesday. So whichever that is, check out the schedule on our website and we'll see you there.